I'm going to show you how to sculpt a cheap 18-inch armature. And to start with a 3/4 inch pipe and a 3/4 inch pipe fixture, plumbing fixture, and screw the plumbing fixture into the board. This board is on a turntable. It's called a Lazy Susan. They're about $6 at Home Depot. This pipe is, again, it's cut to 10 inches. What you want to do is get a tap set, which consists of a drill bit and then a tap, and drill a hole on the side of the pipe about there. You can get the tap. It's threaded and it makes threads, so you put it in gently at first, and then you need to twist the tap. It's kind of hard, it's kind of tricky. Be patient with it, stay with it, don't holler and shout too much, but eventually it'll make threads. Okay, you want to have 3 different sizes of armature wire on hand, and I suggest getting armature wire from an armature or a sculpture supply store. I've tried to use welding rod before, but it doesn't work super well. It doesn't hold its form. It doesn't really hold up the clay. We want to start out with there's a small gauge wire. There's a medium gauged wire, and then there's a heavy gauge wire. You want three pieces of the small, 2 at 36 and 1 at 24. Same thing with the medium gauge. You want 2 at 36 and 1 at 24. And 1 of the heavy gauge at 12 inches. Okay, you want to take your 3 medium gauge wires and line them up on one end. Get a ruler, measure down 12 inches and pinch it off. And from here, you're going to twist down this way. I first do it by hand because it's kind of tricky if you try to grab it with pliers at this point. Alright, got your pliers. Now you want to just twist it. With this armature wire, you can be pretty firm. You can twist pretty tight without these medium wires snapping. The thin gauge wire isn't as forgiving, and if you're using a solder, like a lead-free soldering wire, it doesn't have almost any give to it. So the total twisted length is about 5 to 6 inches. This is still the front 12-inch segment that we first measured. We want to separate all 3 wires. Now what we want to do is cut the middle one in half, and the middle one here, that's the short one from the 24-inch medium gauge wire. You cut that one off. Now what we want to do is on the legs, we want to bend out at a 90-degree angle on both of the legs to make where the pelvis is going to be, and that's about 1 inch. So just make a 90 degree on both of those, and then about 8 3/4 inches down, we're going to bend the legs. That's where the feet are going to be. Those are also both bent at about 90 degrees. We can cut that off about 1.5 inches, 2 inches long. We do the same thing up here, about 1 inch. This is where the shoulder is going to be, so that there's a bend to the arm. And then we want to cut the bottom 4 inches off on both of these arms. At this point, I like to take my armature and bend the middle segment like an S for the spine. That's the shape of the curve of the spine. Now 3 inches up from the shoulders, I like to take and bend Make a little loop there. Trim off the extra. Now we have a human. So now you take the 12-inch heavy gauge aluminum and bend one end of it to match the inside lower back of that. I'm going to take my wire cutters and then press some grooves down the length of this bent portion of the heavy gauge wire. It's where my small gauge wire is going to hold on to this 12-inch piece. So I dug those grooves in. Now I'm going to take this piece, I'm going to bend it at almost 90 degrees up this way. But before we attach the 12-inch piece, I'm going to use the small gauge wire and wrap it around this medium gauge wire. What that's going to do is give the clay something to hang on to. Wrap it a few times on the end, and then you can sort of spin it around the medium gauge wire and just go all the way around the arms. Make sure when you cut the wire, you want to cut it really close, because these become super sharp and they can cut you. Now we have the arms wrapped. Now skip to the legs and do the same thing. All the way up both legs. And I had an extra piece, a little length of wire from the arms, so I wrapped the neck as well. Now we take our 12-inch piece, insert it in the lower back of this sculpture. You don't want this going below here. Here's your 24-inch piece of small wire, and wrap it around both the 12-inch piece and the center of the sculpture, and you want to wrap it kind of tight. Okay, now that that's wrapped on there, go ahead and go about halfway down and bend your 12-inch piece down, straight down at another 90-degree angle. Now sometimes the 12-inch piece can have a hard time catching this bolt, so you can twist a piece of medium wire about halfway down. I like to cinch it down pretty good. Just get a screwdriver and there you go. You're ready to sculpt.